Before we begin, I need to warn you. This story isn't easy to hear. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It's about the quiet things. The moments that don't look wrong until they are. It's about loneliness, blurred lines, and the kind of silence that changes everything. If that makes you uncomfortable, you might want to stop watching now, because what started as something harmless turned into something I should have stopped much earlier. And the worst part, I noticed it long before I admitted it. When she first came to stay, it didn't feel like a big decision. She said she needed a place, just for a while, time to figure things out. And honestly, I understood. Life had been hard on her, so I said yes. I told myself it was temporary. A few days, maybe a week. Nothing complicated. But looking back now, that was the moment everything quietly began to shift. At first, everything felt normal, too normal. We slipped into routines so easily it almost felt familiar. Morning coffee, soft conversations, shared silence that didn't feel awkward. And I won't lie, a part of me felt relieved, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. But something else started growing underneath that comfort, something I couldn't explain. It started small, so small I almost ignored it. The way she would pause before speaking, the way her eyes lingered just a little longer than necessary, the way silence between us stopped feeling empty and started feeling heavy. Like something was building in the space between us. Something neither of us named, until one evening I caught her looking at me, not quickly, not by accident, but intentionally. And when I turned, she didn't look away, not immediately, just a second too late. That moment stayed with me, longer than it should have. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of what happened, but because of how it made me feel. Unsettled, confused, and if I'm being honest, noticed, seen. And that was the part I didn't want to admit. Days passed, and instead of fading, that feeling grew. She was around more, not intrusive, not obvious, just present, too present. And every time I noticed it, I told myself the same thing. This doesn't mean anything. But it didn't feel like nothing. One afternoon, everything shifted. I was in the kitchen, doing something simple, and I felt it again. That quiet awareness of being watched. When I turned, she was there, leaning against the doorway, still, silent. And this time, she didn't pretend. That's when it became real. Because it wasn't confusion anymore. It was awareness. And once you become aware, you can't go back to not knowing. I should have said something. I should have created distance. I should have drawn a line, but I didn't. And I've asked myself why. More times than I can count. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was denial. Or maybe I didn't want to break whatever this was becoming, even if I didn't understand it. That was my first mistake. After that, everything felt louder, not in words, but in silence, in proximity, in the way the air shifted when we were in the same room. The house felt smaller. Every step felt closer. Every moment heavier, like something was waiting. Then came the first real moment. Late evening, quiet house. We were both in the living room, and for the first time, neither of us left. We just stayed, sitting in silence, letting it stretch, letting it exist, and that silence said everything. I remember thinking, this is where it stops, or this is where it changes. And I didn't move. After that night, avoiding each other became impossible, because now there was something there, unspoken but undeniable, and every interaction felt like balance. One wrong move and everything would shift. Then came the moment I can't forget, the one that made everything clear. It wasn't dramatic, no arguments, no confessions, just a moment that lasted too long. And in that moment, I realized something I wasn't ready to face. It wasn't one-sided. That realization hit harder than anything else, because it meant this wasn't imagined. It wasn't accidental. It was something we both felt, and neither of us had stopped. That's when the guilt started. Real guilt. The kind that sits heavy in your chest. The kind that makes silence unbearable. The kind that whispers, you should have ended this sooner. But by then, it didn't feel simple anymore, because ending it meant facing it. And facing it meant admitting it was real. So instead, we kept pretending. And pretending is how things go too far. Days turned into weeks. The tension didn't disappear. It changed. It became quieter, more controlled, but deeper, more dangerous. Because now, it didn't need to show itself to be felt. Then something happened. Something small, but enough. A look from someone else. A question that lingered too long. A silence that felt noticed. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't invisible anymore. That's when fear replaced everything else. Because now, it wasn't just between us. It had consequences. That night, I made a decision. The hardest one I've ever made. Not because I didn't know what was right, but because I waited too long to do it. The next day, I told her she couldn't stay anymore. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before it, because this time, nothing was hidden anymore. She didn't argue. That made it worse. She just accepted it. And that acceptance said everything. When she left, the house became quiet again. But not the same kind of quiet. This one had weight, because now I knew something. Something I can't undo. Some lines aren't crossed all at once. They're crossed slowly, silently, piece by piece, until one day you realize you've gone too far. And the truth is, it wasn't one decision that led here. It was 100 small ones, 100 moments where I said, this doesn't matter. But it did. Every single one did. Now, I sit in the same house, the same rooms, the same silence. But everything feels different, because I know this. Some things don't break suddenly. They shift, they blur, they change, until you don't recognize them anymore. And maybe that's the scariest part. Not that it happened, but that I saw it happening and didn't stop it. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something. Be honest. What would you have done if you were in my place? Because sometimes the hardest decisions aren't loud. They're quiet, invisible, easy to ignore. And those are the ones that change everything.